Hi, what's up guys? Welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to explain what happened 14 years ago, especially this panel right here. So stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what went down 14 years ago. To understand everything, we need to go back in time, 109 years ago, when King Harald was young and full of arrogance. At that time, he met Ida, Hadruden's mother. Ida made him apologize for the first time in his life. And I believe that was the turning point, the beginning of the King Elbaf still remembers and loves. If you've read the manga, you probably know what I'm talking about. After that, King Harald slowly began to see the beauty of the world beyond Elbaf. Before Ida, he thought the outside world was boring. But after meeting her, he became curious and started learning about the cultures of neighboring countries. Ida taught him diplomacy. When he first heard the word diplomats, he thought it was just a fancy way of keeping hostages to maintain peace, which says a lot about the kind of country Elbaf was. In my opinion, Elbaf doesn't have a proper constitution. Everything is decided by the old elders, which is why the king wasn't familiar with politics or diplomacy. 20 years later, Hadruden was born, and during that time, we saw just how powerful the elders really were. They refused to make Ida the queen, and the king had no choice but to obey. So, he married another woman named Istrida. Later, she gave birth to Loki, and we all know what happened after that. By the way, if you want a video about Loki, let me know in the comments. Now back to the king. He traveled from country to country, learning about different cultures. We also saw that the giants welcomed change and loved listening to stories about his adventures. Everything was going well, until the world government started noticing King Harald's movements. They began blocking him from forming diplomatic relations with other nations. At first glance, you might think the world government opposed him because he was a pirate. But that's not the real reason. They were afraid. Before Harald, Elbaf was a land of strength without strategy. So they started calling him a pirate and began threatening the nations he tried to befriend. He kept trying, but failed every time. Eventually, he grew tired of it all and decided to negotiate directly with the world government. They offered him a deal, join them, and in return, he could trade freely. King Harald began visiting the Holy Land, and during one of those visits, he met young Shanks. They got along well, maybe because they shared similar ideologies and a sense of pacifism. If you look closely at Shanks Jolly Roger, you can see a tribute. I know it sounds strange, but those two stripes on the skull resemble the marks on King Harald's face. And what about the two swords? Well, if the sword on Elder Gerald's had once belonged to Harald, then the king used to wield two swords. You can clearly see the difference between those two swords. Back to the story. At that time, King Harald and Shanks couldn't speak freely in the Holy Land. And the way Shanks mentioned it confirms that they wanted to talk about the world government's corrupt system, but couldn't, probably because they were being watched. After all, both of them were considered untrustworthy by the world government. So one day, King Harald called a meeting. He summoned all high-ranking officials. Some were still on their way, like Loki and Elder Gerald, but most had already arrived. I'm not sure what the meeting was about, but I believe it could only be one of two things. 1. King Harald had discovered a dark secret about the world-governed men. Probably that they were turning giants into slave soldiers. He wanted to discuss it, but some giants betrayed him and sided with the world-governed men. 2. The king wanted to discuss whether Elbaf should join the world government, and some of the holy knights came either to see the outcome or for a different purpose. We all know how filthy the world nobles are, especially Emu. They don't want allies. They want servants. At that point, all of Elbaf's top leaders were gathered in a single room. It was the perfect moment to strike, and what better power to use than Domi Reversi? Emu made one of the knights or traitors a vassal and targeted the king first. But before we go deeper, let me explain how Domi Reversi works. Remember this girl from the revolutionaries with the Kobu Kobu no Mi, or Pump Pump Fruit? Her ability boosts others' strength through encouragement. Emu's power works similarly, but it's far more powerful, far more evil, and it amplifies evil thoughts instead. That's why Emu offered the throne to Dori and Bragi, to trigger the evil inside them. If you've read the manga, you already know what Domi Reversi does. When it's used on giants, they don't just grow horns, they grow fangs, wings, and become taller and more terrifying. That's why Emu chose to target the king first. the strongest of them all. King Harald understood what was happening, and so he ordered his own army to kill him. This panel shows that exact moment. King Harald is doing everything he can to resist. That's why he's looking up at the ceiling. But some chapter reviewers misunderstood the scene. They think the king's horns grew back, but that's not true. That's just his mustache. And the wings. That's just part of his outfit. Also, the guards weren't affected. You can clearly see that none of them have wings or fangs. And what about the horns? That's just part of their helmet, standard uniform. Every guard is wearing the same design. So in this panel, the guards are killing the king because they were ordered to. You can see the pain in their expressions. They're angry and heartbroken because they were forced to kill the king they loved. That's what this panel shows. At that moment, Loki and Elder Gerald arrived. Before they could understand what was going on, a knight, or traitor, shut the hall's gates. Everyone inside was trapped. The king had fully transformed into a demonic being, and a brutal war broke out between the demonic giants and the normal ones. You can even see giant warriors trying to escape the battlefield. In the chaos, Elder Gerald was stabbed in the head and knocked unconscious. In the end, only one giant remained standing, covered in blood, Loki, the cursed prince. That's when Elder Gerald woke up, and Loki ran after the knight or traitor. No one else survived, except Elder Gerald. Later, Shanks and Gabon arrived. They found only corpses. They might not have known everything, but they were certain. Loki wasn't the one responsible. We all know what happened after that, because the narrator confirmed it. Every misfortune that struck Elbaf was blamed on Loki. And his mother had already predicted it, that one day, Loki would kill King Harald. So everyone believed it. And Elder Gerald? He either lost his memory or chose to remain silent for some reason. I believe Loki is not like some of us, who argue or waste time trying to prove a point. He simply goes along with everyone. The only ones who witnessed the truth that day were the corpses. Some turned demonic and had horns, some didn't. That day, Elbaf lost its beloved king. But Loki lost everything, the only person who accepted him after Ida. And that's the story of how the world government erased a legend and blamed the last person who still stood with honor. If you found this video interesting and you want more theories, breakdowns, or hidden storylines like this, don't just scroll away. Hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all. And make sure to subscribe, because in this world of secrets and shadows, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Until then, stay curious, stay powerful.